Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Purpose and Profit. I am welcoming Mando to our show. And Mando has 25 years of real estate experience, and he is bringing that to our housing crisis in America. He's diving in with a mission for impact in co living, and he's bringing all of his expertise from multifamily, micro living, fix and flips, lending, the whole gambit to make a huge difference in this space. So, Mando, thank you for coming onto our podcast today. How are you?
Thank you, Amanda, for having me on. I'm super excited to be on and share the journey and this experience with you. I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit. Like, you really are a kind of jack of all trades. You're probably the one of those people that everybody should know. So, tell me how you got started. What's your origin story?
And that's awesome. It ties in with my why as well. I learned the game at home with my mom. My mom was an investor, a real estate investor. She was an immigrant. She's passed now 8 years. She was Costa Rican, and she just had an incredible spirit of always wanting to learn, always wanted to be hip and trendy, and had a great curiosity about life. I think it ties in with the immigrant spirit as well, right? Just you have a different type of edge. So when she was here, she always wanted to buy properties. Like she would tell my dad, "Yo, let's buy this building here. I live in New York City, in Brooklyn. Let's buy this." And my dad was the total opposite. He was just like the no guy. No, 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 no. Limited beliefs. My my father had an incredible work ethic where, 40, 45 years, never called out, never remember ever calling out sick and none of that. So he doesn't, that was his lane. I'm a working man, provide for the family, leave me here, right? But my mom was the dreamer. So what she didn't let that stop her. So what she did, she pivoted, and she would invest in her home country. And the summer times when I was a kid, we used to fly to Costa Rica, and her sisters used to have stuff for her to view. They were kind of delving in the real estate space over there, so it kind of coincided with that. So she would buy land, she would build ground up construction, buy and hold. She would buy farmland, you know, have employees, strawberry fields, coffee fields. So she did it all. She didn't let that negativity, let's say at home, kind of deter her. So I guess it goes back to her spirit that she was like, "No, I'll pivot. I'll figure it out a way." And my dad hated to fly, hated, hated, hated. So it was an easy call. So me and her used to go, and that's kind of how the bug started. I saw it at home, literally from my mom. Imagine, so your mom is your hero for me, anyway. So I see what she was doing. I was just incredibly motivated. And when I started growing up, getting into my early 20s, I started diving into space, and I was searching for like properties down in South Florida. And she helped me in my first couple of deals to get me started. So, yeah, the journey started at home. So, my first property I purchased in '99, which I still own. And then I grew my portfolio. I bought small multifamilies here in the tri state area, specifically Jersey and South Florida. I also have some properties in Costa Rica that I inherited from my mother as well. So I have family that kind of run over that. I've invested in smaller micro families. I mean, in micro families, 30 units, 40 units. Listen, when you want something, you got to surround yourself around people who are doing the work, literally, right? And you get in these rooms, you go to these seminars, and you create opportunities. So that's how I was able to create some opportunities on some multifamily projects. And now being in this community, I'm focusing on co-living. Like you said, it's a crisis. The affordability crisis is something real, and government's not going to be able to step in and solve these issues. I think it's us, the private sector, that are going to be able to make a dent. So that's kind of the mission I'm on now, is working on that side of the business and creating a home for people who kind of boxed out of the let's say the real estate game. Kind of, housing is so expensive. If you want to live next to a metro and your job is by a metro, you work at a ballpark or something, and what do? You have to drive 2 hours, right? So I'm kind of targeting the workforce market, obviously kind of single people that are more transient, not married. So that's kind of the sector that I'm kind of focusing on.
That's beautiful. I think that one of like my favorite things about your story is that your mom kind of started that, and then you were able to start with her assistance, and like I can't even imagine like how she felt having this dream and all of this want, and then just seeing you take that, and like I can't even imagine how she would feel if she saw you right now and the things that you're doing.
Oh man, she was well aware. Like I said, I was already well into the game when she passed, and maybe 2 years before she passed, I worked in healthcare for 20 plus years, right? So probably a couple years before she passed, I told mom, I'm leaving my job in 5 years. I told her, I'm leaving my job in 5 years. And she was like kind of startled. What do you mean you're leaving your job? I was like, I'm doing well enough in real estate that I'm going to be able to leverage myself out of it. And she was kind of, at the beginning, she was like, what? I was like, hold on, mom. I said, you're the one that created this monster, right? And now you're second guessing yourself. So she kind of caught herself at the moment. You know, it's her kid. What are you talking about, right? So, but she gathered her thoughts and she's like, okay, I get it, right? So she knew kind of what I was going after. And I actually left in 3 years. So I met my goal times two, let's say. And what I did was important. First of all, you have to have self-awareness. You got to recognize you want to leave a life that you live for 20 plus years. You are that person, right? And now you want to recreate yourself in another place, in another time. You can't take that mindset of being an employee into being an owner, operator, integrator, whatever, visionary, whatever it is you're doing on your own is a totally different set of thinking. So I recognize that, and I started working on myself. Those 3 years that I left, I separated myself from the pack. I hung out by myself. I was the lone wolf. The winter times, I used to sit in the library, podcast, read, just be in my own space. Summertime, I used to be in the park. Central Park was about 2 blocks away from my job, and be in my own space. I didn't want to surround myself around that water cooler talk, that mundane kind of life that, I lived it, and I wanted to escape it. The first thing I did, I tell everyone, like I said, you gotta be self-aware. And my first practice was the subway system. So in the subway system, what I did, I used to take the L train to the last stop. And what I recognized, I was caught in the rat race myself, right? And so in that train, if it veers one direction, that means the opposite doors are open. And the same for the other were open. So people, when the train would veer, everyone would scuttle to the other side of the door to run outside to their next destination. That's the first time I recognized I have to stop that, right? And what I did to trick myself, I said, you're going to be the last person to leave this cart, right? And that's kind of how I started reverse engineering all that mentality. I did other stuff, but it's kind of very important to recognize where you're at and kind of where you want to go. And it's going to take another skill set to get there as well.
I love that. I was recently reading a book, and it was talking about how most people, they just like automatically, like you said, like getting off the train, they just automatically do what the masses are doing. And you're so right. You have to take a moment to pause and to be like, wait, if everyone's doing it this way, I probably need to do it something else. That's amazing. And that's my favorite thing probably about Owners Club is that I think it's the first room we walk in and everyone does something different than the masses.
Absolutely.
And so that's very cool. Okay. So you got started. What do you think? Because I know like you said your dad lives with you. So how did you have those conversations with your dad when you're kind of overcoming that and you're bridging that gap? It is very beautiful that you had both sides, a hardworking dad and then a visionary mom. And so how did you bridge both sides of yourself in that? I know you started thinking differently, but did you have to have like hard conversations with your dad, or was he like just completely on board, or how'd that go?
My dad is an easygoing guy. He's a very simple guy. My all my experiences more laid out with my mom. I used to share more of myself with my mom. My dad was just a hangout guy. He would just take me to baseball games. He used to always have me playing any type of sport. So that's kind of where our really connection lies, is athletics. He loves sports, and I grew up in that. So that's kind of the space that we really thrive in, is in the sports kind of vernacular. And other than that, he's very easygoing. He doesn't take things to heart. Like, again, he's very simplistic. If it makes sense to you, it makes sense to me, then that's what you want to do. That's fine. So yeah, when my mom passed, he did know that he couldn't live on his own any longer. So I kind of, took that responsibility and brought him in. And he's good. Like I said, he's 87. He's pushing 87, and he's up there, but he's still doing his thing.
Yeah,
I told you I gave him a shot of Bacardi last night, and he was loving it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's like a whole nother sector of people that the co-living helps too, though, right? Like people that don't necessarily need assisted living, but I think that we see those like they call them the golden girl properties or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like when you get to an age, you just don't want to live alone, especially, your spouse has been with you for so long. And like, God forbid, your dad didn't have you to move in with. I think, like you said, the co-living definitely will touch on and help a lot of people that the government just can't even proactively keep up with. And so what kind of, other than the need, what do you enjoy about the co-living?
You're kind of solving someone's concern, a big problem, which is affordability, right? So imagine yourself, you work, like I said, you work in a ballpark and you have to travel 2 hours, let's say, to get, and you're making a low wage, and a lot of your wages going in on transportation and stuff. That I'm talking to a specific sector, like a single person, single guy, single gal. And let's say I try to concentrate closer to the metros where there's ample transportation, as well as enough parking to retrofit a house, let's say, to have 4, 5, 6 parking spots. So a corner lot preferably. But yeah, my mission is kind of to be able to alleviate some of these people's concerns, and then they kind of able grow from these situations. If you're paying kind of as a member for a room, it's not breaking your pocket, right? So it's now the onus is on you to then kind of game plan, right? How do I game plan to now grow out of this situation, right? That means maybe get a better job or get 2 jobs, or start saving, or just smarten up, right? To be able to then use this as a catapult to get to your next destination. So that's kind of how I love to kind of build out my model, even through the visuals in a house, right? Make it the art, let's say, inspiring, or something that you can see, and like a notebook, like a notepad that you can leave on the wall, in the form of art, where you can kind of see something all the time subliminally and be like, oh man, I didn't notice that actually helped me out. A saying, right? An affirmation, something. So I'm really focused even on stuff like that you can provide to people, right? Because you don't know where people are at, and you also want to be encouraging and empowering as well.
Agreed. I love that so much. So what is your what's your 5-year goal? What's your Mount Everest?
Well, it's obviously in co-living and affordable housing, and there's many ways to do that. So I do want to get 25 single family homes and retrofit them in the Dallas Fort Worth area and Atlanta, and those are my primary first markets. So after the 25, these are existing homes that you retrofit them to be able to hold all these members. And then there's a pivot in my Mount Everest, which is now kind of growing into something else. Hey, do you want to continue still doing this in another way? Sure. So this is a phase that I've pivoted to, is building ground up constructions as well, and co-living, where you can kind of control the size, the parameters of a room, and the look of the property as well. I visited a property in Dallas prior to Squad Up, and it was a 14 room, 14 bathrooms. So that really resonated with me because of the privacy of the bathroom. You might not take to account how important that is, but if you're living in a house with people you might not know and you have to share bathrooms, it might be somewhat uncomfortable, right? But that's just the situation you're in, right? So I said, cool. How about, I understand the place I'm in, but I also want to grow into something. How about if you can provide that, a suite, right? And that gives you a little different sense of home. And I believe it also helps in retention and building that kind of a community. So that's the second pivot. And I want to do 25 ground up construction co-living units. And then there's another pivot into get into bigger micro families and then retrofit those to see how this model can work in regards to affordable housing as well. So there's pivots during the Mount Everest, just to again challenge myself. And do you want to continue to do these same things over and over? Again, I know myself. I can get a little bored sometimes. Do I want to do this? So I kind of catered it to who I am as well, right? Do you want to continue to do it? How about just try something new, right? So there's even transitioning maybe even out of there as well. You know, like I said, at the end of the 5-7 years, and get into something more fun and creative like boutique hotels, right? So that's a long horizon as well, sort of like what Doron Levy has in our community as well. So I'm very artsy and stuff like that. I went to culinary school. I've DJ'd, I've bartended here in New York City. So all that stuff kind of ties into maybe creating a boutique hotel one day with kind of my style and my experiences of just being who I am.
That's very cool. And I love the idea. I've been seeing that too. I've the building of the co-living properties. And you're right. I think that like even long term, I could see that that being just a more norm. Like everyone's going to kind of have to pivot to a space to where it does become more affordable, especially for the younger, you know, the 20s, you know, like when you're still figuring out life and what you're doing. And so having that own bathroom, my daughter's been in college now for the last 2 years, and sharing a bathroom with one person can be a whole thing, like versus more than that. And so it's just, I think that's a great idea. I love how you have pivoting. I'm very similar. Like I very easily am like, I'm done with that. And even if you keep doing that, I don't even know if it's done at that, but I feel like once you feel that you've, you know, learned 80% of it, it's time to pivot to learn something else.
Sure.
So that's very awesome. Well, how do you want everybody to get a hold with you, and what are you looking for?
Oh, awesome. Thank you for that. My Instagram is Manifesting Mando. So it's Manifesting Mando on Instagram. I do have a YouTube channel. It's called The Investor Deli. So you can find me there in The Investor Deli. And I also have a merch line specifically catered to our real estate investors. That's my niche. And that's called the investordeli.store. And that's kind of where you can find me. I love being on my YouTube channel. I love being on podcasts. And that's kind of my thing. Appreciate you for having me on.
And you have a podcast, right?
I do. It's called The Investor Deli.
Yes. So everyone should check you out. Well, awesome. So how would you like people to bring you value?
I'm always looking for lead generation. That's kind of something that probably we all always looking for. I'm always looking for more deals. So I'll give Amanda my buy box criteria so she can post it under here as well. And you can send the information there. So yeah, I'm looking for bird dogs. I'm looking for realtors, even property managers local to Atlanta and Dallas Fort Worth. I greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right, Mando. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.